Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. This is a new format for everybody. We've got a new guest to the channel, which I'm really excited to have. We've got David from D&D Adventure Club. We usually are doing stuff like this in Critical Cafe, but I created Tavern Talk just for this because I just felt like it fit the whole theme of role-playing games. So we're going to start this as a series on a channel, and I think it's great to have David here. You've heard me talk about D&D Adventure Club. You've seen a video that I've shot about D&D Adventure Club already. So welcome, David. Really happy to have you on the show.
Brian, man, it is great to be here. Super happy to talk to everybody.
That's awesome. And we've gotten really good feedback, by the way. I'm not sure how much you've had a chance to look into stuff that we've been working on, but we've got this whole kids role-playing setting that we're working on. And the number one question is, and I've done a couple adventures that we've sort of just cobbled together to get people going. The number one question is, where can I go to get more adventures? How do I find stuff? And now I have the answer for them. So like, I was so happy to be able to say, now you can check this out. So no, it's great having you on and picking your brain a little bit about how this works.
Well, and we're all just waiting for the epic crossover adventure where our two worlds collide.
Yeah, to be determined, right? We'll get as soon as we get to that level, but it's amazing. And so why don't you kind of just take a second, introduce yourself, the way I can't, and just kind of give us a rundown of who you are and what you do and how did D&D Adventure Club get started?
Yeah, man. I'm David Lemke. I am the founder, the co-founder with my beloved wife of Dungeons and Dragons D&D Adventure Club, which is a monthly subscription service targeted at young kids and beginning game masters. So I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons since first edition in those dusty days of the early source books. And just recently, became a parent and was going through, the kids are 5 and they're going through their Lego phase, and their kids are 6 and we're going through our doll phase. And when she became 7 or 8 years old, we were sitting around one day and we'd kind of gotten done with all of our early phases, and we looked at each other and said, wait, would you like to be an elf? She was like, what? I could be an elf? And I was like, yeah, and check out this cool little 20-sided dice. And she was just hooked. So we started playing tons of Dungeons and Dragons, just me and her on rainy Sunday mornings. And as I went through it, I began to realize how little content there was out there for young kids, and Dungeons and Dragons is such a great platform for learning incredible life skills like collaboration. We all sneak in math every once in a while. And it's such a great platform for this, but there just wasn't enough content out there. So when my wife came to me and said, hey, is there something that we could do? Is there like a monthly subscription service? It all just kind of fell right together. So what we do is every month we publish a brand new adventure. It's 16, 20 pages long. It's about a 60-minute to 90-minute adventure built for beginning role players. And
it's amazing to hear all of those things, because I've been through all of those phases with my own kids of like, when is the right time to introduce, and like, hearing about your similar experience. And I think we've all been there. I started with right at the end of first edition as second edition was kind of starting. So I remember the days of Thaco and all this, like all of this craziness. And you're right, like being able to find something not only in tone, but also something where you can slim the rules down a bit and make it, easily accessible to someone who's, because it's, for as simple as the newer editions are, in some ways, they're also still pretty complex, and being able to translate that for a kid. And I've noticed that you kind of at least in the starter set that I looked at, like little by little, you introduce some rules throughout the adventures, and you kind of bake them into the game, so you're kind of learning to play as you're learning to play, so to speak. It's sort of a cool
Right.
meta way to look at it, but I love how the approach to it. So
Yeah,
successful
like
in my book.
each
Yeah,
adventure is, it's a complete adventure, but each adventure focuses a little bit on one core skill set,
right.
right? Like one adventure will be a little bit more ability check related, and
Yep.
one adventure will be a little bit more on the combat or the magic or how to make saving throws. And we try to build in a tips and tricks page
Yep.
to every episode, or excuse me, every issue, just to kind of really make things connect.
And
But
I think that's.
I
Oh, go ahead. I'm
oh no,
sorry.
go ahead. Yeah,
No, I
no,
was going
no.
to say,
So
I think
like,
that that's a great way to do it, right? Like, because that's how we ended up learning anyway. It just wasn't broken down that way. Like, it took me a while before I started really having everything click for how things
yeah,
worked. And so
yeah,
this is sort of leaning into that and just saying, hey, you're going to do everything, but we're going to highlight these things in this issue. And then in this next adventure, we're going to highlight it's not that you're
yeah.
eliminating certain rules, you're just highlighting things as you go, which I think is great.
Well, and Wizards did such a fantastic job in 5e with kind of meeting us halfway, right? It was
Yeah.
really complex and esoteric, and it became a lot more streamlined and simple, enough to keep the really avid role players happy, but also enough to kind of create a real simple system that beginners could to jump in. But I think if we're talking, bringing 8-year-olds to the table or 10-year-olds to the table, I think we still needed to take one more step, right? I think we still needed to take one more, hey, let's streamline this just a little bit more. Let's make things a little bit more simple. And we can go through a couple of the ways that we've tried to do that. But it's, uh, yeah, the system is there for us.
Yeah, no, and I think it's it really well said, because they did such a great job with fifth edition. I think really trying to build the best of all the previous editions into one, as much as
Yeah,
they could through a lot of playtesting, things like that. But there's still going to be a learning curve for someone that is either brand new to role playing. Because while we're talking about kids, and I think that is the primary focus, I've also talked to people recently that said something like that would be useful to me.
yeah,
I know my partner Crystal has adult ADHD, and so when she looked at that, she's like, "Oh, that makes much more sense now." So even people that have maybe a neurodivergent population can get something from it. It doesn't, even though it is themed for kids, it doesn't
right.
necessarily have to be just for them. So I see a benefit just in this type of content for a wider audience if they aren't afraid of jumping into something that is maybe primarily put together for kids, and that doesn't turn them off. I think that's the thing, right? It's still D&D at a level, right? It's still a role playing game that you can get
Yep.
into, and you can do what you need to at your table to make it work for you. So this is
We,
really well done.
we've kind of discovered that our sweet spot is people who played D&D in college once or
Yeah,
twice, at a party or something like that, and now they have kids and they're looking around trying to figure out what they want to do on a Sunday afternoon with their kids. And it's like, I remember how to play D&D. I think I know kind of the mechanism. We're all sit at a table and there's some dice and paper, but I don't remember the exact steps. So I think, while we're written for 10, 12-year olds, I think we're also written for the parents of the 10, 12-year olds.
it's such a great. And so what are, you mentioned, some of the things that you do to sort of adapt the rules, and kind of what are a couple of things that you found are the most beneficial when you're taking a look at, I'm going to put this module together, how do I do that? How do I streamline things? How do I make it work in this scenario?
Well, so I think one of the number one things, it's really super simple, but it makes a huge difference, was no indexes. So when we have an adventure, all of the rules and the descriptions of the rules are right there in the text of the adventure, right? We're not supposed to understand, oh wait, okay, the rules for jumping, Okay, so wait, no, I need to go to the index. It's on page 347 of the player's handbook. I can go and
Right.
do that sort of stuff. Or like the monsters. If there's a monster in the text, we actually take the stat block and put it in the adventure text itself, as opposed to most of the official stuff has like giant toad. And then I have to know, oh, okay, I know. Wait, giant toad. Is that the one that's in the back of the DM's guide, or is that the one that's in the monster manual? Or so I think the reducing kind of the need to hunt
Yep.
the source books and keep people focus at the table, because we know with younger audiences and beginners, kind of attention span and focus is a precious commodity. So everything that we can do to kind of keep the attention right in front of everybody, I think is a huge step. So no indexes. That's job one.
Yep, it makes so much sense. And as you're saying that, I started off actually my career as an elementary school teacher before I started doing other things and
Oh
moving
yeah.
into the corporate world and doing YouTube. I actually taught elementary school for a number of years, and one of the things that and this is, I promise that the dots will be connected. But one of the things that I had to do during that tenure was serve on a textbook committee. One of the big things when you were starting to do a textbook search and find what were the features of textbooks that we were really looking for was exactly what you said, where if you're introducing new content, keeping things grouped together, because if you have to search around to learn something and take something from this page and then go all the way over to the index, or to look something up in a glossary just to find out what the definition was, didn't make sense. So the best textbook companies would do exactly what you said. This is a far cry from a textbook, right? Like we're talking about gaming, but the concept is still there, because the research shows that people that can see the information together can build context. When if you have to separate, you start losing context. The more books that you've got to look through, or the more pages that you've got to shuffle through. So I found it really useful when I was going through to see that, and even your character sheet and the quick start guide, where it's sort of annotated. So when you are looking at a sheet, you've already kind of laid everything out, showing them here's what all this stuff means. So yeah, I think it's well done, and it's a good approach to do that. What are some other things that you have found are really useful in bringing that
Yeah,
to this audience?
so like 5e, you remember you back in the day that D&D was started by a bunch of tactical war gamers, right?
Right.
And things like grappling and flanking and all of those sort of rules were really, really important. And I think for us, we've really streamlined all of that. And I don't want I don't want our audiences trying to figure out what the 5e rules for grappling are.
Yep.
So we are 100% 5e, 100% compatible, and we don't change any rules or don't do any kind of specific homebrewy sort of things. But there are rules that we ignore. And
That makes sense. Yeah.
flanking and a lot of the stuff around movement and a lot of the things on ranges and that sort of stuff. Try to think like an eighth grader, or excuse me, an 8-year-old, where you're, if the game master says you can see an orc, I should be able to cast a spell at that orc, right? Or I should be able to attack that orc or address that orc. I don't want to have to worry about, well, wait, he's 70 feet away, but I can only move 65 or whatever. So really try to keep the kind of the theater of the mind aspect of the role playing open, and streamline a little bit more of some of those more deep tactical
Yeah.
rules.
And I love that approach. And actually, I found more and more, just even from non-kid centered stuff, is going that route, where there's a kind of a famous YouTube channel, Dungeon Craft, and Professor Dungeon Master is, and he came up with this idea of, he still uses minis because he's a big fan of minis, but he uses a circle just sort of a circular, almost like a lazy Susan, and sometimes he puts it on there, and he basically has close range, mid range, and far. And so instead of having to build a big map, anything on the outer edge is just representing something that's really far away, and the middle is that mid range. And so I think that it's becoming more and more common that people are moving that way because you can get your game up quicker. You can play in a way that still is satisfying. You're still thinking about range, but you're doing it in a way that's sort of a common sense, easy to relate to way. And if you want to go from there to a more tactical style game, it's not a huge leap to move forward. But to go backwards is a harder challenge sometimes. Once you've figured out, oh, I've got to use all this math, and you've got locked into that war game mentality, it's hard sometimes to go back from that gridded approach to the abstract for some people. And I think it's smart starting in more of that, concise way where you're not worried about those rules, and they can expand to that later if they like to. So.
Right. And, and I think, if your table includes a bunch of 14-year-olds who are really into that sort of tactical nuance, all of this, because it is pure 5e, right? All of this, it's compatible kind of upwards, but you don't want to start the conversation there, right? You don't want to teach that out the gate.
Yeah, and I think again, it's smart to the direction. It's very smart to go this route and let people grow with the game, rather than be overwhelmed with all the rules up front. So it just seems like you started off on the right path so that it can grow as the kids grow, like they can move on to other things. So let me just not to derail us from this conversation, because I love talking about this stuff, but let's take a step back. Like, what got you into doing this to begin with? I know you were a fan. Like, were you doing game design? Were you working in a different avenue of your life? Like, what were you doing before you started with this? Because I know I wasn't doing this type of stuff, even though I'm doing it now. And I think a lot of people are in that boat where they didn't start doing this. They found themselves doing this. So what was it for you?
Yeah, that old adage about just, keep doing your passion and one day it might become your career. Kind of thing. I think that's sort of where this has all come from, because D&D was always kind of a hobby along the sideline, along my day job. But slowly but surely, this has become kind of the really the primary focus, and we're just so excited at the kind of the amount of people who have been joining and subscribing and jumping on and becoming a part of the club. It's been a really fun ride.
I'm just like, again, sometimes I have to pinch myself to realize that we're in this day and age where we can do this type of thing and we can make this stuff into a reality. It seemed like a closed circle of people early on, and those that were just kind of doing the gaming world and those that were involved or producing this kind of content. And it almost felt like I couldn't break that wall to even want to get into it. And now things seem to be open, and it seems to be there's an avenue where you can create things, and people that connect with it will find you and support it. So it's
and the
nice
publishing technologies are. Yeah, the publishing technologies are out there and are so advanced now, right? I do all the writing and do all the art, and my wife does all the page layout and all the administration and all that sort of stuff. And everything is mail order. We really, really try to be pen and paper based, right? Yeah. And I love all the VTT stuff that's happening, the virtual tabletop stuff. That's super exciting. But I think our mission is to get families and friends together around the kitchen table and get them working with pencils and paper and rolling actual dice. And so we're trying to. We might be a little bit Luddite, but we're really trying to kind of keep things as good old fashioned as humanly possible. And I think people are responding to that.
I do. I know. It's sort of where I'm trying to go as well. I think that there's definitely a benefit to having digital content and have PDFs, and all that stuff is great. However, I can just tell you a real brief sidetrack story is, as we were communicating before we got together for this, and we had to reschedule because we had a hurricane coming in this area, right? So
Yeah, you
luckily
did.
everybody's fine, and no, luckily, knock on wood, we didn't have any issues. But man, when the power goes out, we can still play D&D, like we
Oh,
can
there
play
you
things.
go.
And that can be a big issue here in Florida. So we have these quite frequently. Even when there's no damage, they have to shut down the grid and do stuff. So we can have a group of people sitting around a table, and you really start to see that light bulb go off. Going, this is great. I'm rolling dice. Can I see what side of the dice do you have? I love those. Those are great.
Right.
Like all of the stuff starts to come out that you used to, at least when I was young and when you were younger, when we used to play, that was just part of the game. And so I
Yeah.
completely empathize with that. I think it's great to try to take people back to those days.
Both my wife and I come from agency life, and
Wow.
we've been in marketing agencies and strategy agencies and creative agencies for a zillion years now. And I think in my professional life, you see all these job skills like collaboration and creative storytelling and kind of shared narrative skills that come into our jobs every single day of the week. And it's funny how many times I've left a meeting thinking, oh my gosh, that was a D&D encounter. Did you see the persuasion check that just happened?
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
uh, it seemed to me like there's such a great opportunity as an educational tool
Yeah.
for role playing for young kids all the way up through high school. We've seen a lot of people adopting theater therapy for neurodivergent kids, for young adults with kind of differently abled um, uh, challenges or opportunities, and I think D&D is a lot of people are beginning to see. Oh my gosh, this is kind of a narrative system that somebody with an ADHD could jump into and look at and understand. Oh, here's how I could structure a conversation. Here's how I could, I could build a story in collaboration with other people. And I think it's just such a great foundation for that kind of learning.
I couldn't agree more about that. And I think that there are others that have done a lot of this research to back up everything that you just said. And I know that there's a fantastic organization, Game to Grow, that did a Kickstarter. They put together a whole, or you're probably already familiar. Yeah. Then your neck of the woods.
Adam and I have talked a bunch.
Yeah.
He's what he's doing over there is just amazing.
Yeah, so I think, and on the other side of it, when you were talking about the business meeting, it really kind of clicked. I remember watching a TED Talk several years ago now, where someone was explaining Dungeons and Dragons to the group in the TED Talk, and how it could be used to help better manage a group of people by understanding the teamwork and the effect and the different roles people play, and just that
Yeah.
correlation. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into this, and if you start this young enough, like you said, after school programs, whatever it might be, you need just a few pieces of information, just a few bits of material to get something like that going. It doesn't take what it costs to do a whole computer lab. It's
Right.
very low entry point for people. Subscription, by the way, for those watching, to D&D Adventure Club will get you some adventures every month, right? So
Yep.
if you are running these one of these clubs, this is a really great way to get people into it. So just to kind of go back a little bit to when we were talking about the rules of the game and kind of how you have stuff set up, I noticed on your site, on your website, and I'll make sure I link to it in the video description so people can check it out. But I also noticed that you provide extra character sheets
Oh yeah.
on the site. So you've got some stuff out there that people could go take a look at now and kind of go through. And I love the way that they're formatted. And great art, by the way. You do a great job with that. And you even have printable,
Thanks.
sort of foldable little paper minis that you could make,
Yeah.
which I think is just a great idea. It's still paper pencil, but now you've got a mini if you really want to use one based on the character art for that sheet. So I think that's really great.
every issue that comes out has a pre-generated character in the back of it, and so we've taken each of those pre-generated characters and made them a free download on our website. So it was funny, the other day we looked around and we said, "Oh my gosh, we've got a backlog of 24 pre-generated characters." And so one of the things that I love to do for kind of our first time DM is to ask them, go print out a ton of those, and when the kids all rush the table, have them pick the character that they want to play, and that's a really fast way of immediately getting everybody right into the game.
It is, and I love having them see, here's all the choices that I have. Really makes it tangible. They can kind of go through and see. Do you also, and maybe because I didn't get this far in the content yet, but do you also have a character creation aspect too, where you can make your own, or are you kind of leaning into the pre-gens right now? Because I actually see the merits of using pre-gens quite a bit, but I was just wondering if you included that at this point.
Yeah, Brian, that's one of the hard things. So in order to get a general sense of the rules and get a general sense of how to play, we were able to condense it all into a 20-page little tiny quick start guide, right? And you read through that twice, get a bunch of people around a table, and you're off and playing, right? That part is really, really simple if you use pre-generated characters. If you want to go through the character creation process, it's more like a 300-page rule book that you have to produce, because that's the part of the puzzle that is really complex, and kind of the web of all the choice making and the backstories and all that sort of stuff. So we're really, really super open about, if you want to go through the character creation process, go get, kind of the official player's handbook or the starter kit or whatever it is. But if you want to go ahead and start playing this afternoon, pick a pre-generated character and you're off to the races.
I actually think it's really smart to go that route. It's been a while of making videos. I think I made a video about this, or at least had it in one of mine, where I sort of talk about the benefits of using a pre-gen, even in just standard 5e, versus rolling one up yourself. Everybody loves to roll up their character, not taking that away. And I mentioned this, I think, in that video too, that there's something about making your first character. Having said that, if you're learning to play the game, making that character, you don't know enough yet about what options you're choosing. You don't know how that plays out. And so you're almost having to become a little bit of a game designer in the creation process. And if you just want to play, it's easy enough to pick a character that does what you think you want to play, and if you want to change the name, and and just roll with it. And it also gives you, I think, especially with 24 something characters, it gives you the ability to learn more about the game from all of the different types of pre-gens that you can play. You switch from playing this one to maybe you want to play a different character. We'll choose something else. Maybe you want a magic-based character and you were doing a fighter-type character last time. No problem. Just pick a different pre-gen. And I think you learn more about the game that way too, without having to worry about how do I create that to make it so I can go play. So I think it's a smart choice, especially with this with the way you're trying to encapsulate the rules. But I just wanted to mention it just because if someone is kind of coming in, they know what they're getting with this. But I think there's so many pre-gens out there right on your site, they can see what they're getting. So this is great.
And another one of the questions that that we're working to figure out is how to level up, because that's another thing that is almost as complex as generating a character from scratch. Is how do I go to third level or fourth level? And again, that web of choices becomes so complex that you quickly, you can't replicate that in an easy to read 20-page pamphlet. You have to point people to the player's handbook. But what we've done is we've made each adventure we've got a quick little guide on how to level up the adventure to a third level characters, fourth level characters, and even fifth level characters. So if they have grabbed kind of one of the source books and are leveling people up, the adventures are still compatible with whatever party that you got going on.
That's smart too. And you know what's really funny is I found recently, even Wizards of the Coast, for their pre-gens, they release pre-gens in like, here's level 1 set of pre-gens,
Right.
here's level 2, because they don't want you to have to worry about doing the leveling up process even with those. So I think it's smart to be able to at least bake in, here's how you would adjust this adventure to fit whatever level your character is bringing in. So that's smart. Yeah, again, just really excited about this type of stuff and where it's going. So, and it seems like if you've got 24 of these out there, how many adventures have you gotten so far? I don't want to pin you down to a number, but at the time of this,
24 adventures.
24.
So each adventure is meant to be, about kind of a 90-minute, a couple, a puzzle, a couple small encounters, and then a medium bad. And then every 3 adventures fit into a little bit of an arc. So we have a Mount Minotaur arc. We have a in-town adventure arc. We have a in the sewers arc. So they all kind of fit into something. If you want to have that kind of larger campaign kind of feeling, that's available as well. But we try to also make everything kind of very simple and bite-sized.
And built into those, which I thought that, and just to talk again about it, it was in my sort of original video, but they're really, the print job, everything, the construction of the booklets, really well done. And it seems like, are all of the adventures, they have the map sort of as the back cover page, or the inside and the back page. So, and then those will change depending on the series. Like maybe the first 3 have one map, the second 3. Got it.
Exactly. So for each arc, you get a new kind of orienting map of either the region or the section of dungeon that you're going through. And then if there's little specific maps within the adventure, those will be in the text of the adventure right there as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
And one of the other things I was kind of, as I was going through some of the stuff, I was wondering is, you've got now a backlog of these. It must be, especially if just the 2 of you running this for now, and I know you've got the print company that's doing their job, but if you've got people that want to go and pick up adventures or back issues, so to speak, can they do that, or is there a PDF version available? How do they do back issues?
There are PDF versions of everything available 100% online. So that's always available. And we have, we have a dwindling catalog of back issues in the print. And, when we sell out of those, we just turn on the PDF. And so, yeah.
And are you currently shipping internationally with these 2, or is the international audience PDF only?
Yeah, no, we're shipping internationally, and we've got quite an audience everywhere. We don't sell dice internationally because those are a pain in the tush to ship. But but the adventures themselves, it's super easy. We've got a lot of people in the military on bases all around the world, and a big following in Australia and Asia as well. So.
Yeah, that's where I learned to play. I wasn't in the military, but I was a military brat growing up. My stepdad was in the Navy. I learned on base playing with friends in the neighborhood. That's kind of how I learned how to play D&D.
There's a direct line between the military and uber nerd D&D fan.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And I learned that really quick when I was there. And then, funny enough, is when I moved from one post to the other after my stepdad got transferred, my core group of friends that I had started playing with, and one of whom is my best friend to this day, we are best friends because his last name was right behind mine, and we sat in alphabetical order in class.
Right.
And so that's how we met.
Yeah.
And we've been since 8th grade best friends ever since. And he was in my original D&D group, and talking to each other we found out that 2 years before he lived on the same Navy base that I did, where I had just come from, and there was this whole connection. So it was probably D&D that helped us kind of kick off the friendship. So it was it was a fun sort of way to start things, and we're still doing it today. I just got a call with him earlier this week. So
We're right now. I am in my DMing for fun job. We're closing out the last stages of nearly a 20-year campaign with my old college buddies.
that's amazing.
And it's those sorts of relation, and we're all in different parts of the world and all that sort of stuff, but we still try to get together every Thursday and play a little bit of D&D. And it's just that sort of kind of lifetime connections that if we can just do that for one or two people, man, I think our jobs are done.
I couldn't agree more. And it's hard sometimes to explain that 20-year-long game to people that are sort of on the outside looking in. But I promise you that's a more common story than you might think if you're watching this for the first time. But no, that it's pretty amazing to keep something going that long. Funny thing is, that's what got me thinking about the whole concept of the kid version, because what I started doing, I have a pretty big age difference in my kids. My oldest is in his 20s, and Ethan is just turned 11. So I've done this twice of having to tone down content for D&D and explain, here's what happened. So bedtime stories for my first 5-year-old were about the adventures that me and my friends went on. I would just retell them in a sort of watered down version for a bedtime story when he was really young. So there's a lot to be said for just this. It's really a collaborative storytelling experience, and being able to do that and share that with kids, I think, is just amazing. And then they can pass it down themselves. So, So I don't want to digress too much, but
No, but I love that. And we try to make, when you're working with multi-generational tables, it would be really easy to kind of design everything for the lowest common denominator. But I think one of the things that we really strive to do is to keep enough edgy stuff on the edges so that the people who are more likely to get deeply involved in the nuance, or people who really want to kind of, this has a whole political backstory that I could really kind of go into, it's there if you want it, but you can just skim right past it on the surface and have the time of your life being a 9-year-old barbarian if you want to.
Yeah, it's very smart. Or even, again, even for anybody that wants to skim over that stuff and they just want to go in and grab treasure, that's
right.
Sometimes that's just what people are into. But I love that you're thinking that through and making that sort of intentional as you're developing these. So, so what's next for D&D Adventure Club? Is it just pushing forward with getting the best adventures you can out each month, or do you have anything else that you're currently sort of thinking about that you can talk about? Or I don't want to spoil anything if you're working on anything new.
Oh boy. Yeah, no secret plans, but right now for kind of every year around Halloween, we come out with a spooky trilogy. So this next trilogy is going to be about Baba Yaga and her wandering hut, which is from second edition on, it's always, evil witches have always been a part of my world. So doing that for a bunch of second level characters, I think has become so much fun. And after that, we have a trilogy in a cloud city, floating, kind of a Jill and the Beanstalk sort of story.
Nice.
So, we're really, really focusing on just getting great content out there month after month, and I think putting together some free PDFs for easy download for kind of higher level adventures. That's part of the plan in the future. But for now, it's just doing great content for the club.
And I think that kind of says it right there, right? Like the focus is putting out the best content you can for that members of the club that are trying to have a great time every month when they get one of these and play some D&D. And so this is, I think, it's so exciting to see something like this out there. What have I not asked about that you that you want to make sure people know about what's going on with D&D Adventure Club in general?
Well, I think, one of the things that I really want to emphasize is how simple it is, and it's. Have you ever had the experience with a tabletop game where you're kind of coming in and you all want to play Settlers of Catan or whatever it is, and it always starts with 3 hours of reading the rule book and trying to figure out and arguing about, wait, what happens? And if only you had somebody there who has played the game before, and there was an easy way to just jump right in and start to play instead of worrying about all the rules and what am I missing. If you can just jump in and start to play, you immediately get it. Takes a little bit longer with adults, but 9-year-olds are off into the races within the first 5 minutes, and you can't stop them. So
Right.
I think one of the things that stops so many people is just worry. And so by trying to be so simple, by keeping the focus right in front of us, we're really trying to create a platform for people just to jump in, start playing this afternoon, and hopefully creating something that becomes kind of a lifetime passion.
That's beautiful. And I think it actually reminded me of something as you were talking. Um, I think I'm right about this, but please correct me if I'm not. In addition to kids being the players in these games, it's not necessarily has to be parent or adult running the games. These kids can learn how to eventually they can learn how to use the material and run their own games. Am I right about that? Or
Yeah, we've had a lot of players we talk about as young as 5. But in order to game master, in order to kind of run the table, I often tell people that you need a charisma score of at least 12 or 13.
right.
Um, but usually it's about a 10-year-old, right?
Yep.
Because, in order to play, you need somebody who can kind of read at the middle grade reader level. But in order to be a game master, you need somebody who not only can kind of read, but can wrangle focus, right,
Yeah.
and bring the table back and create that sort of initiative order of things that need to happen. So that's usually about 10, 12.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Like, I mean, it's probably on the very low end of the scale. It'll probably be a 10-ish, but like up from there, 12 or so. Um, and definitely, middle school-ish kids would be able to jump in. And I think that says a lot because I remember not knowing anything about what I was doing, being in middle school, trying to run second edition for the first time. And we had fun, but we were all stumbling through trying to figure out this craziness of rules and everything that's going on. And so, it's not that this was 100% intentional to be the game master guide for kids. It's really this, you're putting out the adventures, but the fact that kids at any age can learn how to deliver a game or to run a game is pretty amazing, because normally I think at least what's being sold to, even at the Wizards of the Coast level, is they say, here's a starter set, it'll teach you what to do, there's a section but they're almost expecting that the parent in the room is going to run the game and the kids
Right.
are going to play, right? And I think that there's the opportunity for game masters to develop from this too, and that's, I think, huge, because you can only have as many games as there are people willing to be game master for the game, right? Like you have to have them jump in, and I think that this is setting the entry point for people to be able to run games, because even if you are a little older and you've never, maybe you're not maybe you're in your teens or up, you can learn how to do it with these much easier, I think, than you could even with the starter set. Not knocking the starter set. I'm just saying that I think that the way this is kind of pared down is really well done. But
I,
I've heard about other people, even playtesting. I asked about the shipping earlier because I have one playtester for our setting that we're developing who's in the UK, and he was really hopeful to get some of the stuff that you've got, and asked about, hey, I've got a younger kid. Do you think they'll be able to run games with this? And I was like, I don't know, but I'll ask and see if it's an option. And if they have the right maturity and they can handle it, then maybe that's something they could do.
yeah, we try to build in, the rule of cool
Yep.
is triply important for younger game masters, right? That the rules are there and the rules are great for building a story around, but the rules are subservient to the story, right?
Yeah.
And you got it in just telling a great story. And if you get the rules wrong, or you accidentally did 30 points of damage, it doesn't matter, right? In the grand scheme of things, building kids with confidence and kids who just believe that they have the ability to do this is the whole key, right?
Right.
And
Well said.
whatever we can do to support that kind of growth, to support that sort of mindset, that's kind of one of our design principles.
Uh, really well said. Where can people go to find? I have links. I'll put them in the description, but just
Well,
so I can hear it from you, where can they go to find your stuff?
why, Brian? Yes, subscribe today at DnD Adventure Club.com. And there's a great website there with all the links. Subscribing, it's only $9.99 a month. We do everything we possibly can to keep the costs very affordable for lots of different players. And the subscription service, it's super easy to pause, to stop your subscription. There's, it's not one of those sort of trappy kind of things. Yeah, jump in, subscribe, try it out, and see how your Sunday afternoons with your family improve.
Absolutely, and especially for all of you here, when you lose power, you'll have something that's on the shelf ready to go as soon as you need some. So build up your collection. So no, I thanks David for joining us today and taking some time to talk things through and share what you're working on. I'm really, like I said, I've been talking about this for the last few videos ever since I got a chance to look at it. So I'm really excited about what you guys are doing, and I think it's really worthwhile. So everybody, check it out, and yeah, we'll catch up with everybody next time.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, thanks.